Hi there guys, and welcome to another episode of the Cover Zero Show with me, your host Simon Comboy. Carrying on with the draft preview series today, finishing up the AFC East today. This episode will be focusing on the New York Jets. So for those of you who haven't seen one of these episodes before, what I'll be doing is going through what I consider the team's major needs heading into the draft on Thursday, with free agency essentially having wrapped up at this point. Giving my mock pick for the first round, going through other possible selections at that point, players that I throw out there that I think could be considered or likely will be considered, and doing the same for the second and third round selections for said team. So the Jets, in terms of team needs, I mean, there's a lot. This roster's pretty threadbare at the moment. I'm only giving 3, but there's certainly plenty more. Of course, the quarterback spot, giant question mark at this point. Whether that's something they look to address this year, I'm not certain. I suspect possibly not. This team is in full rebuild as far as I'm concerned, and even if they won't come out and say it, I think most people are looking at it that way. I think wide receiver's a big need. Brandon Marshall's gone. I think Eric Decker's also likely to soon be gone. Quincy Nunn was a guy who's contributed a little bit, but definitely need to try and find some high impact receivers for the future. And the cornerback spot, Revis, of course, no longer with the team, was a bit of a disaster last year. Surprising, honestly, that kind of fell off to the degree that he did. Definitely need to bring in some guys to try and stop the pass. Was not pleasant watching their defensive backs field last year. So in the first, the Jets are picking 6th. In my mock, I have them picking, or bear in mind, it's quite an old mock now at this point. I had them picking Taco Charlton. I think he's a player who's going to really rise up draft boards, and I really do think he's going to go in the top 12 picks. I do still think that this is going to be a consideration, even if he's not necessarily. I'm not, but just to be clear, I don't consider him one of the top prospects in this draft. I think he's a first rounder in terms of potential. I definitely think this would be too high. I just think someone's going to go for it. Pass rushers, teams take chances on. Quarterback, of course, not out of the question. I don't think this team does. Everyone's sort of, all the media saying none of these guys look ready to go year one. I'm inclined to agree for the most part. I do think that Kaiser could probably start in year one, but I would expect to see a lot of mistakes, especially on a team this bad. And I wouldn't want to go near him with a 6th overall pick. If they're going to consider anyone, you'd have to think it'd be Mitchell Trubisky. Of course, a lot of rumour that the Jets are looking to trade down. I'm sure they are. Wish them the best of luck with that, unless it's with my lot. I don't want the Bucks to trade up to 6. That would be very frustrating. We need a lot of depth. We need picks. But also corner, I think this is certainly a good spot to look at one of the corners going off the board. Lattimore, Humphrey, although Humphrey's stock seems to have fallen. Who knows, possibly even Conley could go this high if Lattimore is off the board at this point. One of the safeties could certainly help here. They are considered 2 of the top prospects in the draft in Hooker and Adams. I think even Reuben Foster would certainly be worth considering. I think he's a top player. Running back isn't out of the question. I'm not sure it would be a great decision at this point, but if Fournette's there, certainly worth garnering consideration. I can't see McCaffrey or Cook being taken this high, but I also wouldn't rule it out entirely. In the second, I think the Jets are a team that needs to take the best player available route. I think there's a good chance that could be one of the receivers. I wouldn't be shocked if John Ross fell into this kind of range in the second round. I think he'd be a reasonable selection at that juncture. I really like Zay Jones. I think he'd be a good pick. Evan Ingram, even though Titan, of course, maybe not the highest impact, but I think he'd be certainly one of the top rated players on my board, likely at this point. Even Njoku, if he falls into this juncture, although I don't know if he'd fall out around 1. Jared Davis, if he falls to this point, I think he'd be a great selection. I've also got Jordan Willis. I think he's rising up boards. I think he'd be a good fit for that defence. I think they should certainly consider him. Adoree Jackson, he could be considered. Alvin Kamara might be available. I used to think, I still think there's a good chance he does go in round 1. Maybe not a good chance, but there's a chance. But if he's available at this spot, I think he'd be a great selection. Joe Mixon, if the team really wants to take a chance on a top end talent with some character risk, there is a need at running back. I think he'd certainly be considered. And there's going to be some good safeties at this juncture as well. I think guys like Marcus May, I don't think Melifonwu sounds like he's going to be available at this point. Buda Baker, certainly options for the Jets if that's the route they wish to go. In the thirds, this is where I think running back becomes a heavy consideration. Donta Foreman, Marlon Mack, Brian Hill, some of the guys that I expect to be available at this point. I think they're all pretty good players. Blair Brown, I could see them going with a linebacker. If they want to go receiver, I don't know where Juju Smith-Schuster's going to go. They could get him in round 2. He may be available here. Malachi Duper and Cooper Kupp are 2 guys that I think will be available in the third that I like. Bucky Hodges, again, the tight end spot. Jalen Tabor, certainly a possibility. This is the kind of team, actually, that I think in the second could definitely take a chance on Sidney Jones. Next year's likely going to be a bust. Get one of the top players in the draft in round 2. Have him, sit out a year. I think that certainly wouldn't be a terrible thing for them. He could also go with Davis Webb or Austin Webb. For some reason, I get confused between Austin and Davis with him. I think he could be considered. If he's available in round 3, I think that'd be a reasonable selection. They could also do it in round 2. I'm not sure that would be a great idea. As I said in Dom's it's very hard to speculate what corners will be available. I'm definitely expecting there to be a run on the defensive backs in the second round, so I wouldn't really want to speculate there too much. Some of the linemen I think would garner consideration here. The offensive line is a bit of a mess, whether that's, I think Evan Pocic would be a great selection at this point. I think he's got a lot of versatility. I certainly think they could look at guys like Antonio Garcia in the third. Isaac Asiata, if he's around, he'd certainly be worth looking at. Nico Siragusa, I think he'd be a good selection in the third. Dan Feeney, if he's available in the third, I think he ends up going in the second. I really do at this point, due to the lack of linemen. I think he'd certainly want consideration. So, Jets fans, let me know what you think. One of the tougher episodes to do. I really do think the Jets, one, are very likely to look to move around the board, trading down, accruing more picks. 2, there's so many needs on this roster. I think it's very hard to pinpoint exactly who they're likely to target. I think it is just a case of, if there's one team that's going to absolutely stick to best player available in the AFC, it's certainly likely to be the Jets. I think, even at this juncture, they probably look behind the Browns. I think the Browns had a really good free agency in terms of talent level. So, could be tough sledding there. Let me know what you think, whether it's in the comments section below. Find us on Facebook at Cover Zero, or find me on Twitter at Simon Conboy. Doing my best to get back in touch with everybody who does make contact. I like having some good football discussion, always good. This week, got a few bits coming up. New mock draft for the first 3 rounds coming up tomorrow, hopefully before Mayox. In fact, it will be before Mayox. I'm going to absolutely make sure of that. Doing a live stream on Thursday, so especially for some of you Brits who will be up at stupid o'clock like me to watch it. I'll be watching that with a couple of mates. Check it out. It'll be some banter, be some company for you. I think it'll be really entertaining. We'll be giving our, of course, our opinion on the picks as their main, just discussing football. So that should be good. Going to be finishing up the AFC over the next couple of days with the AFC West. And if you've enjoyed the show, check out some more. Pretty much all the NFL's been covered for this point. I did free agency coverage, reviews of the last 10 years in terms of drafting. I thought that was a really good series, and there's some other bits and pieces. Check those out, and if you could like, share, subscribe, check out the Patreon, all that good stuff, it'd be thoroughly appreciated. Always grateful to any support shown by others in this little venture of mine. It's been a pleasure as always. Thank you very much for your time, and as always, go Bucks.